Hello, geeks and ghouls. It's this time of the year, it's almost 2021, and as I said in a previous video, in 2021 and 2022, I'm rereading the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Steven Erikson, and I know that many of you will start reading the series for the first time this year in a big, epic YouTube read-along organized by Mike from Mike's book reviews, and some time ago he was talking about this reread of his, and he was and left a comment about where people do stop reading the series when they find it difficult to continue. And I know that this series has a reputation for being a tough read. It's not exactly, but over the years I've been reading the series. I read the first book. Let me ease this stack of doom. I've read the first book back in 2004, so 16 years ago, and over the time I've seen many people starting and abandoning the series, or starting and taking a hiatus of the series, and hell, I did take hiatuses too, so that must mean something. I mean, I started reading in 2004 and finished in 2014, so it took me 10 years to read 10 books. I think that's above average, to be honest. But I know that many people started the series very excited, hearing the best about it, and then they just stop because it gets too much for them. And excuse me the poor lighting, but the books were in the way of my desk light, so it would be very weird to do this, and because of the poor lighting there may be some delay between video and speech. I'm very sorry for that. And I'm here to tell you where you may stop reading Malazan Book of the Fallen for the next 2 years and why you shouldn't stop. Alright, let's begin. I think that the first part where you'll stop is 100 pages into this book, the first one, Gardens of the Moon, and the reason you'll stop reading in about 100 to 200 pages because you understand nothing about what's happening. Because Steven Erikson has this weird habit of throwing you headfirst on the world of Malazan, and he takes no time to explain anything. And to be honest, that's one of the strong part of the series, because as you progress, you will discover answers to your questions, and some of them may be cryptic, some of them may be explicit, but you'll find answers and you piece a lot of lore together. And even after you finish the series, there's a lot of lore that is left unexplained. So with every new book you read from the Malazan world, and there are like 4 series out there, and a 5th one to begin. There is the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, there is the prequel trilogy, of which 2 books are published by Steven Erikson, and then there are 7 books of the Books of the Malazan Empire by Ian C. Esselmont. I had a review for the first one, I've read it recently, and then there's a trilogy called The Path to Ascendancy, also by Ian C. Esselmont. He is the creator of the Malazan world with Steven Erikson, and it's about how... spoilers. How the Emperor of Malazan and his assassin got to be the Emperor and the assassin. It's kind of hard to not spoil anything, but I'll try my best. So you may start reading and you understand nothing. You may read this war and stuff and you see what's a war and how does this work. Spoiler, I don't think it's ever explained, at least in the 10 books of the Malazan series, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, but there are some strong hints about what it is, and you'll read a lot of names, a lot of situations, a lot of weird races of the Malazan world, and little descriptions, so you'll have to piece things together. I mean, I just learned the skin color of a very major character by reading Knight of Knives recently, because I hadn't noticed. So yes, it's very minimal in description, but it's not just about what the author tells you, it's about what you understand of the book. It's part of the charm of this series of books. So you don't have to understand everything. You definitely should not go in wikis and look for stuff, because much of this series is discovering things as you read along. So yes, if you don't understand something, don't worry, it's very natural. That's part of the purpose in the book, and you should just go along and piece things together. What I'll try to do in my read is try to point out some of the important stuff we learn in the books. I'm not quite sure about the format, and if you have any suggestions for how to do the read videos, I'd love to hear that. I guess I'll do a review of the book first with no spoilers, or with a spoiler section for those who read it for the first time. Then I'll do either a segment or a separate video about a reread of the book and why it's important in the big picture of things, and maybe I'll point out some of the things you should have noticed for the lore. It'll be a lot of paperwork, but I'll do my best to do that. I'm not good at taking notes. So yeah, Guardians of the Moon, you may not finish it because trying to piece things together will be too much for you, and I get it. And you know where the second snag is? Deadhouse Gates, the second book of the series, because you start this, you finally got into a groove, and you've learned the Darujistan world, and then you're thrown into another continent, and you know none of the characters, you know none of the things, and if you were in a groove, okay, and then you're out of the groove into another song entirely, and you'll be like, oh, that's exhausting, I really don't want to read this. You just stop, and don't worry, the whole point of the series is that we start in different locations, and the storylines kind of meet halfway through the series. So see it as an opportunity to have a bigger scope, a bigger picture of the world of Malazan. It's not like you follow one group of characters throughout the books, no. And Andy Smith had a great video about postmodernism in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and he said that this series is not about plot, it's about seeing the experiences of the characters as a lot big events are happening. So it's a huge cosmic event, a big war of sorts for the entire series, and what you're reading is the viewpoints of different characters, some half-stated things, never quite explicitly said, and you have to piece everything together about what's the big story. And yes, the big story is revealed, but in the final book of the series. So that's why I'm reading, because I want to see, having the knowledge of what happened throughout the series, how it affects the first books and what do I see in them. And you may also, reading this book, you may get to the middle and you have all those people walking through the desert and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of bored. But believe me, the final 300 pages of this book are some of the best epic fantasy I've ever read. It's really epic, definitely a fantasy classic in my opinion. The Chain of Dogs is just an amazing read, and I think that after the Chain of Dogs you'll hardly stop reading at Memories of Ice, because A, it's one of the best books in the series. Yes, we're back to Genabakis, the first continent, and we continue straight from where Guardians of the Moon left us. So I doubt you'll stop here, honestly. I mean, I remember reading this book in 3 or 4 days, and it's thick. It's over 1,000 pages, so oh yeah, it's quite a chunky read. House of Chains. We're back in the plotline of the House Gates with a twist, because the first 200 pages, I believe, is just about one character, Karsa Arlong, who is a major character, and he and two more of his tribe people are going out and raiding and pillaging villages and raping and doing all this fun stuff like the barbarians they are. And these 200 pages are just exhausting. I mean, I was exhausted reading them. Ending me here, and Karsa Arlong is basically when you cross Conan the Barbarian with the Grey Hulk from Marvel Comics. Yeah, it's so fun of a character to read. and then we get to the events after Chain of Dogs and what is happening there. And yeah, I mean, I didn't like that part of the book at all, and I can understand why people may get frustrated. And I was frustrated. I stopped reading these books for 4 years after reading this one, House of Saints. So I think that's one of the weakest books in the series. The Malazan Reader Tag has said that this book broke me, and it may break some of you. It's not a very long book, considering it's only 1,000 pages. Some. Yes, the books are huge, so the 2-month periods will take for the read-along are necessary to read them. They're long books, and there's a lot of stuff happening in this book, many characters, and many stuff follow. So House of Chains is a dire warning, and I think that we're supposed to read this on September, October. We'll see some people very frustrated by then. But you know what? It's just a book, and Karsa gets better in the next books. And then we get to the 5th book, Midnight Tides, the last book we'll read for 2021. And if you were frustrated by the constant shifts of the 2 continents, you'll hate this book because this is a 3rd continent with a totally separate magic system from the first 2 and totally new races. Some of the characters of this book have appeared in House of Saints and Memories of Vice, but that's because it's also a prequel. It's before Guards of the Moon, I believe. You may have some people very frustrated by all those new places and new characters and new storylines, but believe me, it's very important, and I'll tell you why. It's also chunky. It's one of the average book of the series. It's like 900 and some pages. It's a breeze. Yeah, those books are huge, but it's a good story. It has one of my favorite characters in there. I won't tell you which one, but when you read it, you'll understand who he is. It's a him, and it's very interesting. It's actually one of the best stories for me. It's one of the best beginnings of a plotline. It has some very interesting characters, very interesting themes in it. It's very political, but in an interesting way, because it touches upon certain themes like imperialism and capitalism, and it's a great critique of modern society and US politics. And it was written during the George Bush Jr. era, something that is very interesting to keep in mind when reading this series in 2021 and 2022, that it was written during the War of Terror era, and it may reflect some of the issues of the era in those books, especially in Midnight Tides. It's a great book, and it's about an epic fantasy that is anti-war. But enough blathering, let's go to the first book we'll read in 2022, The Bonehunters, and I doubt that you will abandon the series at this point because you see the light at the end of the tunnel, because some of the plot lines in the previous book start to converge here. And so I think that The Bonehunters is one of those books that if you manage to get this far, you'll hardly stop reading it. And I think that Reaper's Gale, which to me is one of the other high points of the series, these 2 books, The Bonehunters and Reaper's Gale are the high points, and everything converges over here. It's starting to make sense what you're reading. It's going somewhere, and if you've read all the previous books, you know that every book starts with some diverging characters that come together. So we start to see that yes, the direction is doing this for the entire series. And by Reaper's Gale, by the end of this book, which is probably one of the longest, it's 1,260 pages long. Yeah, you'll do a lot of reading for this read along. These books are huge. These books are fucking huge. Yes, The Bonehunters is a small one. It's only 1,200 pages long. But if you were very happy that everything is going along and progressing and we're reaching the end of the book, tell the Hounds. where we go back to some of the loose plots from the previous books and wrap them up. And I hated this book because I really wanted to get to the end, to the finale, and I felt that this book was a roadblock that took, and it's huge, this book is huge, 1270 pages to wrap up a lot of the storylines that are left hanging from the first 4 books. I know that some people love this book, and maybe rereading it will change my mind, having the big picture in mind and being less eager to just finish the series. But you may just feel less compelled. I mean, if you... Alright, real talk. You went through all this, and you have these books left to read. You'll soldier it, okay? I doubt that people will abandon the series with all the Hounds, but maybe they'll just choose to wait for a while and then not follow the read along. Because to be honest, it's a lot of books we've read in those 2 years, and I think that some people may decide to stop reading at a certain part of Dust of Dreams because there is one of the most harrowing scenes in the entire series here. I won't spoil things, but it may be too much for some people. And I remember when Tor.com went out and got rid of the series, there was people commenting about how this scene terrified them. But I doubt that you'll stop reading at Dust of Dreams simply because you've been this far and you're close to the ending. I think you'll soldier through the rough parts. And yeah, there's no way if you reach the 10th book in the series, you'll stop here. So to wrap up, these 4 books are probably the ones that will break you and make you stop reading Malazan. But as you saw in this video, there is a reason not to stop reading them and go on, because by the end of it you'll be rewarded. Take my word for it and explore the series. Maybe take your time and don't push yourself to finish because of the read along. The videos and commentary will be here for you, even if you decide to take 3 or 4 years to the series. And there will be a lot of Malazan content in the next 2 years, I'm certain of it. Do my best to finish the rereads, but yeah, there may be a good case that I lose pace or I just get too tired of reading myself. This series can be intimidating because of many reasons, because it does some things different and it challenges the reader. It tackles a lot of themes, some heavy themes. It's not grimdark, but oh boy, it's almost there, and it's just very complex and demands of you to read along and put pieces together. It's not your average farmer boy to superhero epic fantasy, which I hate. I hope you have a nice holiday, the remainder of it. I hope the rest of 2020 will leave you, I guess, important, and I wish you a happy 2021 and some fun read along. Thank you for watching.